The pick is in.
With the 7th pick, the New York Jets select Armand Membou, offensive tackle out of Missouri. Let's bring in Locked On Jets host John Butchko to talk about that. And John, let me ask you this. Were you surprised that the Jets picked Membou as the second O-lineman taken off the board?
No, I wasn't. A lot of the buzz heading into this draft was that the Jets really liked Membou, that he was a guy that was rising up their boards as we got deeper into this process. Most of the buzz was that the Jets were either zeroed in on Membou or Tyler Warren out of Penn State, the tight end. But I think looking at the situation right now, Jets had 4 of their 5 offensive line slots kind of locked in. You have Olu Fashanu at left tackle, John Simpson left guard, Joe Tippmann at center, and Elijah Vera Tucker at right guard. Right tackle is really the question mark, and it's been that way since the offseason began when they lost Morgan Moses to New England. And entering the day, their projected starter would have been Chukwuma Okorafor, a guy they signed during the offseason, a guy who only played 12 snaps last year with the Patriots before he was benched and then left the team. And the year before that, he was Pittsburgh's starter at right tackle and was benched that year. So I think that, look, you'd like to have a better situation at tight end than Jeremy Ruckert starting, but the bigger need is definitely the offensive line.
Indeed. And to your point, when you look at a player like a Tyler Warren and you kind of look at the depth at tight end in this draft, you can easily get someone that solid unless he's going to be generational, like as we talked about a Brock Bowers this high in the draft. But looking at Membou, what are the biggest assets for you that he brings to the table, especially in terms of giving Justin Fields the protection that he's going to need in order to thrive, as well as Breece Hall to continue to keep striving and thriving like we've seen him do even last season?
Well, that's a great way of putting it. Justin Fields is a quarterback with a lot of potential, but through his career, one of his issues has been a lack of pocket presence. Sometimes he holds the ball too long. Sometimes he doesn't do a great job maneuvering within the pocket. You want to make sure you have a good offensive line in front of him. And the Jets' offensive line was really solid at pass blocking a year ago. It was kind of one of the untold stories of the year. We know the Jets had a bad season going 5-12 when they had such high expectations, but it was really not the offensive line. It was really the first time in recent memory the Jets had a solid offensive line, but they lost Morgan Moses in the offseason. In Membou, you get a guy with a lot of upside, a guy who's got the physical tools to play the tackle position effectively, and a guy who succeeded at a very high level of college football at a young age. And, as you mentioned, Breece Hall is a quality back. Breece Hall's a home run hitter, but he's not always great at reading his blocks. And so one of the things you got to make sure you open big holes for Breece Hall, because if he sees daylight, he can rip off a 20, 30-yard run. But you got to put the guys in front of him who can move defenders.
Indeed. And you look at that defense, and the defense is the kind of the bell cow for this New York Jets team. Maybe the offense a little bit unheralded or underwhelming, if you will, because of maybe what we saw last year. Ultimately, however, they may have been a little bit closer, John, than maybe folks give them credit for. So when you look at adding this final piece, as you mentioned, to the O-line for head coach Aaron Glenn and for offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrom, how does that give them the ability to really build out an offense that complements a pretty solid defense?
It's like I mentioned, like the Jets' offensive line woes have gone on for like 15 years since the early Rex Ryan days, when at that point they had one of the best offensive lines in the league, and they stopped investing in it, and the offensive line deteriorated, and it's been difficult to it's been difficult for the offense to operate, because we always focus on the playmakers, we focus on the star receivers, we focus on the running backs to rip off the big runs. But at the end of the day, football is a game where you have to control the trenches, and if you can't control the trenches, your offense can't move. I mean, I could show you any random Jets game probably between 2013 and 2023 where the Jets are getting annihilated on the offensive line, and that's one of the big sources of their problem. So the second straight year, the Jets have drafted a tackle in the first round, and that's a little unconventional, but I think it's a positive, because I think it's showing you that they are committing to building a team that can win in the trenches, and ultimately that's how you win games in this league.
Yeah, and I think they're understanding, as I like to call it, how important the brains of the operation is. I always say the unheralded guys, the offensive line, really do make the engine run. So for continuing coverage of the New York Jets, subscribe to Locked On Jets wherever you get your podcast. And for more on Armand Membou, let's hear from Locked On Mizzou host John Miller, who spent a lot of time covering Membou up close.
Missouri's Armand Membou is an extremely high floor prospect. I'm John Miller with the Locked On Mizzou podcast. And while Membou is a very good right tackle in the SEC, an excellent one, I would say, I have to say most years I'm not sure he would be the top-ranked tackle in the NFL draft. The arm length is good enough, but not ideal, I would say. So there is some question as to whether Membou can hold up in pass rush against the absolute elite rushers in the league. However, I think worst-case scenario, he's an excellent run blocker and a really good guard at the next level, worst-case scenario. Again, I'm John Miller with Locked On Mizzou. Check out my show on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.